Today's episode is about the incredible story of this small country in Central America named El Salvador. The country was marred by gang violence. At its peak, there were 103 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants in 2015, making it one of the most unsafe and violent places on Earth. This is despite the fact that it's not a war-affected region like Syria and Ukraine. Fast forward to 2023, the homicide rate has dropped down to 2.4 per 100,000. But how did this happen? Let's find out. The credit for this transformation goes to one man, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Bukele, often referred to as the coolest dictator, is known for his youthful, tech-savvy image and his heavy use of social media to communicate with the public, which contrasts sharply with some of his more authoritarian actions and policies. But before we delve into the actions taken by Bukele to make El Salvador safe, let's first understand the crime situation in El Salvador and how it all started. And it all started with our beloved drink, coffee. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, coffee became El Salvador's principal export, driving economic growth. However, this boom primarily benefited a small elite class of landowners. The coffee boom concentrated land and wealth in the hands of a few elite families, displacing peasants and indigenous communities. This land concentration and the exploitation of laborers on coffee plantations created widespread poverty and dissatisfaction among the rural population. The stark economic disparities fueled social tensions and led to political repression. A notable instance was the 1932 peasant uprising, where thousands of rural laborers protested against the oppressive conditions. The government's brutal response, known as La Matanza, resulted in the massacre of an estimated 10,000 to 30,000 people. These entrenched inequalities and the repression of social movements laid the groundwork for the Salvadoran Civil War between 1980 to 1992. The conflict, driven by the grievances of marginalized rural populations, saw leftist guerrilla groups, supported by disaffected peasants, fighting against the government and the military-backed elite. Even after the Civil War, the legacy of the coffee economy's inequality continued to influence El Salvador's social fabric, contributing to ongoing violence and instability, including the rise of violent gangs. Gangs in El Salvador, known locally as maras, have a deep-rooted presence in the country and are known for their extreme violence, extortion, and influence over communities. The two most prominent gangs are MS-13, Mara Salvatrucha, and Barrio 18, 18th Street Gang. MS-13 originated in Los Angeles, California during the 1980s, primarily formed by Salvadoran immigrants who fled the Civil War in their home country. The gang later spread to El Salvador after many of its members were deported from the United States. Like MS-13, Barrio 18 also originated in Los Angeles. It was initially formed by Mexican immigrants and later expanded to include Central Americans, including many Salvadorans. Barrio 18 is divided into two factions in El Salvador, the Revolucionarios and the Sureños. These factions sometimes collaborate but often compete with each other, adding another layer of violence. Gangs exert control over many communities through extortion. They demand protection money from businesses, transport operators, and even individuals, severely affecting the economy and quality of life. Gangs often recruit young people from impoverished neighborhoods and use coercion, promises of protection, and a sense of belonging to attract new members. In areas under gang control, gangs often enforce their own rules and punish those who disobey. This control extends to social and communal aspects, such as dictating dress codes and curfews. In June 2010, gang members from Barrio 18 ambushed a bus in San Pedro Perulapan, a town near the capital, San Salvador. The gang members forced the bus off the road and set it on fire. 14 people were burned alive, and several others were injured. The victims included women and children. This attack was part of an extortion scheme, as gangs commonly target public transportation operators who refuse to pay protection money. In a similar event in 2010, gang members set fire to a passenger bus in Mexicanos, a suburb of San Salvador. In March 2015, gang members ambushed and killed 11 policemen over the span of a few days. This was part of a coordinated effort to target security forces. In May 2018, 5 family members, including 2 children, were killed in their home in the municipality of Soyapango, a gang-dominated area near San Salvador. The family was targeted because they were believed to have cooperated with the police or were seen as a threat to the gang's control over the area. In November 2019, gang members attacked a family in the eastern city of San Miguel, killing 5 people, including a pregnant woman and a 9-year-old child. These are just a few of the many instances of violence inflicted by these gangs. The people were sick of the violence, and in 2019, they elected Nayib Bukele to power with 53% vote. It was the first time in 3 decades that a president wasn't coming from the two dominant parties, FMLN and Arena. Bukele had founded his own political party, Nuevas Ideas or New Ideas. However, due to bureaucratic obstacles, he ran for president under the Grand Alliance for National Unity, GANA, in the 2019 election. Representing the Grand Alliance for National Unity, Bukele's election marked a significant shift in the political landscape. One of his first moves was to tackle corruption, a pervasive issue in El Salvador. He dismissed numerous officials suspected of corrupt practices and launched investigations into high-profile cases. This move was met with both praise and criticism, as some saw it as a necessary step towards transparency, while others viewed it as a political purge. One of Bukele's most ambitious initiatives has been the Territorial Control Plan, aimed at reducing gang violence and restoring public safety. Bukele launched the Territorial Control Plan in June 2019, which involves increasing the presence of police and military forces in gang-controlled areas. This plan involved deploying security forces to reclaim territories dominated by gangs, establishing checkpoints and conducting extensive patrols to limit gang movements, and enhancing intelligence operations to dismantle gang networks. In response to spikes in violence, Bukele has ordered mass arrests of suspected gang members. In fact, people were arrested if they had tattoos on them. The rationale behind the tattoo-based arrests was that tattoos are commonly used by gang members to signify their allegiance, rank, and even specific crimes committed. This visual identification has been utilized by law enforcement to quickly identify and detain suspected gang members. A crackdown in April 2020, following a surge in homicides, led to thousands of suspected gang members being arrested. There were widespread raids and operations targeting gang strongholds to disrupt their activities and leadership structures. In March 2022, Bukele declared a state of emergency following a sharp increase in homicides. Certain constitutional rights were suspended, such as the right to legal counsel and the prohibition of arbitrary detention. The detention periods without charges were extended from 72 hours to 15 days. Even within the prisons, stringent measures were taken to weaken the gangs. Gang leaders were isolated, and their communication with the outside world was totally cut off. In addition to this, members of rival gangs were mixed in the same cells. The mega prison in El Salvador, formerly known as the Terrorism Confinement Center, is a significant and controversial development in the country's fight against gang violence. The facility can house up to 40,000 inmates, making it one of the largest prisons in Latin America. The prison is designed with high security features to prevent escapes and maintain order within its walls. These include advanced surveillance systems, armed guards, and fortified perimeters. Human rights organizations have expressed concerns about the conditions within the mega prison. Critics argue that the facility could lead to overcrowding, inadequate healthcare, and potential abuses of inmate rights. As of early 2023, El Salvador's prison population exceeded 90,000 inmates, making it one of the highest per capita incarceration rates in the world. Almost 2% of the population is behind bars. The prison occupancy rate as of 2024 is 236%, leading to severe overcrowding. The Bukele administration argues that the mega prison is a necessary tool to combat the country's severe gang problem. The government maintains that the prison will help restore order and security, benefiting the broader society. Many Salvadorans, frustrated by decades of gang violence, support Bukele's tough stance on crime and the construction of the mega prison. They see it as a decisive measure to curb gang influence and improve safety. The government claims that the mega prison will offer rehabilitation programs to help inmates reintegrate into society. These programs include vocational training, education, and psychological support. Apart from his radical and controversial actions, Bukele has also been involved in several other positive measures aimed at improving the socio-economic situation of El Salvador. One of them being the decision to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender on the 7th of September 2021. A significant portion of El Salvador's population is unbanked, meaning they do not have access to traditional banking services. Estimates suggest that around 70% of Salvadorans do not have a bank account. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general offer an alternative means for financial inclusion. By using digital wallets, people can participate in the economy without needing a traditional bank account. The government's Chivo wallet was introduced to facilitate this. Remittances from Salvadorans working abroad, particularly in the United States, make up a substantial part of the country's economy. However, traditional remittance services often charge high fees and take several days to process transactions. Bitcoin can significantly reduce the cost and time associated with sending and receiving money from abroad. Transactions can be processed quickly and with lower fees compared to traditional remittance services. This can potentially save Salvadorans millions of dollars in transaction fees annually. El Salvador has faced challenges in attracting foreign investment and stimulating economic growth. By adopting Bitcoin, El Salvador aims to position itself as a hub for innovation and cryptocurrency. This move is intended to attract tech companies, crypto entrepreneurs, and investors to the country, thereby boosting economic activity and creating jobs. The Salvadoran economy is heavily dollarized, meaning it relies on the US dollar as the primary currency. By introducing Bitcoin as legal tender alongside the US dollar, El Salvador seeks to gain greater financial independence and diversify its economy. But Bitcoin is also known for its price volatility, which poses risks for everyday transactions and savings. The government has established a $150 million trust fund to stabilize conversions between Bitcoin and the US dollar to mitigate this issue. Bukele's administration has also focused on infrastructure development and attracting foreign investment. Projects such as the expansion of the Port of La Union and the construction of a new international airport aim to enhance trade and tourism. Additionally, Bukele has sought to create a more business-friendly environment by reducing bureaucracy and improving security, which has encouraged foreign companies to consider El Salvador as an investment destination. Recognizing the importance of human capital, Bukele's government has invested in education and healthcare. Initiatives such as the Mi Nueva Escuela program aim to modernize school infrastructure and improve the quality of education. In healthcare, efforts have been made to expand access to services and improve facilities, although challenges remain in ensuring equitable access across the country. Bukele has also prioritized poverty alleviation through social programs targeting vulnerable populations. The expansion of conditional cash transfer programs and subsidies for basic goods are aimed at reducing the economic burden on low-income families. Despite his achievements, Bukele's presidency has not been without controversy. Critics accuse him of undermining democratic institutions and consolidating power. In May 2021, Bukele's party, Nuevas Ideas, gained a supermajority in the Legislative Assembly. This was followed by the dismissal of constitutional court judges and the Attorney General by the Legislative Assembly, and replacing them with officials seen as loyal to Bukele. This raised alarm among international observers. This move was seen as an attempt to weaken checks and balances, leading to accusations of authoritarianism. There have also been concerns about media freedom and civil liberties under Bukele's administration. Journalists and media outlets critical of the government have reported harassment and intimidation. Furthermore, Bukele's use of social media to attack opponents and discredit independent institutions has been criticized as a tactic to silence dissent. Bukele has frequently employed the military and police to enforce his policies, including during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic and in his crackdown on gangs. This militarization of public order has raised concerns about the potential for abuse of power. Bukele has declared states of emergency, notably in response to surges in gang violence. These declarations have led to the suspension of certain constitutional rights, such as the right to legal counsel and protection against arbitrary detention. This approach has been criticized for bypassing due process and enabling potential human rights abuses. Despite all the criticism labeling him as a dictator, he was still elected through a democratic process first in 2019, then in 2021 and again in 2024 with an 85% majority. Bukele maintains high approval ratings among the Salvadoran populace. And why not? Normal everyday people who used to once live in fear can now freely go about their daily lives without worrying about being extorted, kidnapped, or murdered. So what's your take on the situation in El Salvador and the methods of Nayib Bukele? Let me know in the comments. That brings us to the end of the video. Alive and Curious is a new channel and would love to have your support. So if you like what I say and do, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. See you in the next one.